Today, we're going to talk about something that starts on the modern battlefield, but ends up rewriting the very rules of global power. We're diving deep into how artificial intelligence in warfare is connected to this huge, almost invisible struggle for control over our digital lives.
The machine did it coldly. Think about that for a second. That one sentence from an intelligence officer is just chilling. It gives us a window into a new kind of war, one where these life-and-death decisions are being handed over to algorithms. And honestly, there's no better place for us to start.
So here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start with a very specific, real-world case of AI in a conflict. From there, we'll zoom way out to look at the global fight over data, something experts are now calling a new kind of colonialism. We'll get into the inequalities of this digital age, the pushback for what's called digital sovereignty, and finally, tie it all together to see what this new global struggle is really all about.
All right, first up, AI on the battlefield. Our sources detail the use of several AI-powered systems in the Gaza conflict, and these things were designed to do one thing really well: speed up the targeting process dramatically.
Now, at the heart of this are two key AI systems. You've got the Gospel, an AI that's all about places and things. It recommends buildings, command posts, stuff like that. And then you have Lavender. This one's different. It's an AI-powered database that identifies people as potential targets. So you've got one AI for the structures and a whole other one for the individuals.
And just to give you a sense of the sheer scale we're talking about, look at this number. According to intelligence sources cited in Plus 972 magazine and The Guardian, at one point, the Lavender system had put 37,000 men on a list of potential targets. This isn't just targeting, this is target generation on an industrial scale.
So you might be asking, why? Why use these systems? Well, the sources say that in past conflicts, military planners would face this strange problem. They'd eventually run out of targets. AI systems like these solve that problem by creating a never-ending pipeline of recommendations, which allows military pressure to be kept up at a relentless pace. But this incredible speed brings up a really tough question: when that's going to define this new era of warfare? What happens to human oversight when the machine is moving that fast? This quote from an officer using this system really gets to the heart of it. He said, "I would invest 20 seconds for each target." He felt he had, in his own words, zero added value as a human, basically just a stamp of approval. And that highlights the core dilemma, right? When you're asked to review a life-or-death decision in 20 seconds, how much real judgment can you actually apply?
And that opens up a whole Pandora's box of ethical and legal issues that experts are pointing to. There's the obvious risk to civilians, of course, but also accountability gets blurry. If the AI makes a mistake, who's to blame? This all leads to something called automation bias, where people start to over-rely on the system, becoming exactly what that officer said, just a stamp of approval. Now, the sources we're looking at present two very different sides to this story. On one hand, testimonies published by Plus 972 and Local Call allege that there were pre-authorized limits for civilian casualties. On the other hand, the IDF response states that these assessments are made on a case-by-case basis, and that they do not carry out strikes when they believe the collateral damage would be excessive compared to the military gain. Okay, let's pull the camera back, way back, because this intense focus on data, it's not just a military tactic. It's actually part of a much bigger global picture. And this brings us to a really powerful idea that some scholars are talking about: digital colonialism, where data itself has become the world's most valuable and most contested resource.
So what is it? Well, the core idea is this: the massive extraction of data from huge populations, mostly in the global south, creates these new dependencies that look an awful lot like the old colonial relationships. The only thing that's changed is the resource being taken.
And this comparison just makes it so clear. In the past, classical colonialism was all about extracting raw materials, gold, rubber, you name it. And they built physical things like railways and ports to get those resources out efficiently. Today, in what's being called digital colonialism, the raw material is data. And the infrastructure, cloud servers, fiber optic cables, is built to do the exact same thing: extract that data efficiently.
Now, this whole new model for how the world works creates a seriously uneven playing field. It's built on what researchers call three key asymmetries of our digital age.
So these asymmetries basically fall into three main buckets. First, there's the infrastructure. Who actually owns the physical stuff the internet runs on? Then there's the economic side. Who's making the money from all this data? And finally, there's governance. Who gets to write the rules for the internet? And in all three cases, the power is overwhelmingly concentrated in the global north. This chart is a pretty stark example of that infrastructure problem. Get this, an estimated 80% of internet traffic between two African countries is first routed overseas, mostly through Europe. So an email you send from Lagos to Nairobi might actually go through London first. It's not just slow and expensive. It creates real dependency and major vulnerabilities.
What this all leads to is this economic model where the global south provides the raw material, our data, while the global north gets to process it, turn it into high-value digital services, and then sell those services back to the rest of us. It's a very modern version of a very, very old economic story.
Okay, so what's the answer to all this? What's the pushback? Well, it's a growing global movement for something called digital sovereignty. It's all about taking back control.
Now, it's really important to get this right. Digital sovereignty is not about a country unplugging itself from the internet. The source material is really clear on this. The goal is strategic autonomy. It's the ability to be part of the digital world, but on your own terms, not on terms that are dictated by a handful of giant companies or foreign governments.
And this whole quest for sovereignty really breaks down into 4 key battles. First, the battle for infrastructure, actually owning the data centers and the cables on your own soil. Second, the battle over data, passing laws to control how your country's data is actually used. Third, the battle for regulatory power, having a real seat at the table when the global rules are being made. And finally, a battle for cultural sovereignty, making sure local languages and knowledge don't just get flattened and erased by dominant global algorithms.
And this brings us right back to where we started. This is where we connect that AI on the battlefield directly to this massive global struggle for digital freedom.
So you see, those AI targeting systems we began with, they aren't just some isolated military tech. You can think of them as the sharpest, most extreme edge of this larger global fight. A fight over who controls data, who gets to have autonomy, and who gets to be sovereign in this new digital age.
This quote really puts the historical stakes into perspective. It's basically saying we are living through a new kind of decolonization movement, but this time it's not aimed at political empires, but at informational ones.
Which leaves us with this final massive question. In a world that is increasingly run by these huge invisible digital empires that collect our data and shape our choices, what does it even mean to be sovereign anymore? To be autonomous? What does it truly mean to be free?